What's up, my fellow vapors? Today we are here to talk about the Anvil by Vestratto. Alright, my first impressions of this device is this is not for the weak-willed or the faint of heart. This device is for the experienced vapor or the combustor that likes those really big, hard, super amount of cloud bong rips. This is for the serious person, someone that really needs a high volume of really dense vapor. It does have a bit of a learning curve, and once you do learn it, it's still a little finicky. It can be a little inconsistent. You know, if it's hotter or colder inside the room that you're in, doing the same exact heating method isn't always going to be good. You kind of have to learn the device and go above and beyond to get it to work in the same way every single time. Primarily, this device is used for flower. However, you can do twax bowls or double deckers, which is a mix of flower and concentrate in there. There is not really a way to just do concentrates by themselves in a good way. You know, you could technically, but really you want to be using flower in this thing. Basically, it's an on-the-go desktop vape. If you have a B series from Cannabis Hardware, this is going to be a torch-powered version of that you can use at home on the go, or, you know, when you're on an adventure somewhere if you want that really big, heavy hit. All right, we're just going to go over a few of the key components. You have the oven, which is comprised of a bowl and a condenser. You have the midsection, which has the stem, a heat shield, and then on this end you have the mouthpiece. We'll start breaking it down from the top here. You unscrew your bowl out of the top of the device. This is where you put the flower in here. The full bowl that comes with it is about 2 Dynavap bowls, or 0.2 worth of material. Then you have the oven. The oven is this part here, which is where you heat the device. It has a couple copper bands on here for heat transfer. They call this part the thermal battery. When you torch here, this is going to be the hottest part of the device. And then on the bottom of the oven, you have your air inlet holes. Then inside the oven, you have the condenser with the screen. This is what stops all the Scooby snacks from going in your mouth and directs the vapor to your lungs. Then moving down the device, on the top of the stem here, you have this part that unscrews. This is the user's edition of the Anvil. They have since upgraded a couple of these parts, which we'll go over in a second. But for the original version of the user's Anvil, this is where you unscrew for the airflow. You can just unscrew this to raise it up. And let me show you what that does real quick. So when this is inside here, you can see this slot here. So if you unscrew that part, it closes off this hole, which restricts the air hole. Take that out. It comes all the way out. And then you have the mouthpiece, which unscrews. And then the heat shield, which unscrews. This is kind of cool because it's interchangeable. They have a couple different colors, or you can check out cool people like Azzwood from the UK, does beautiful exotic wood heat shields, really cool stuff. For sure worth the checkout if you end up getting an Anvil or if you already have one. Then you have the stem. So this is the base stem with the airflow part screwed in. As I was saying, they have since upgraded this part. They had some issues where this part could be a little finicky or hard to adjust the airflow, or if you wanted to do your first hit more restricted and then your second hit wide open, you couldn't really do that. So now they have upgraded this piece to what they call the integrated stem. Just for a little comparison, you can see basically the same up until about this part, where they engraved their name in there. Looks a little more polished. And then the airflow is what really changed here. This part doesn't screw or unscrew at all. The way that the airflow is adjusted in this is you basically just spin it. You can see there's a small hole and a slotted hole. So you can either do very restricted, medium, or wide open. And that's the integrated stem. So to put this all back together, I'm going to put the heat shield on. Screw the mouthpiece on. Make sure that's all tight. And then thanks to a little tip from a friend of mine, Darkside, the way that you want to put this together is you want to sleeve the condenser inside of the oven, screw the bowl on, and then put this all together. Before I got that little tip, I was doing it kind of like this, where I would just take the oven, put that on, put this in here, and I'd push down. But something about if you push down the condenser too hard, it restricts the airflow and really cuts everything off, so you don't want to do that. So again, the best way to do it, make sure this is all loose, put the bowl in there, and then just fit it all together. And now that's a perfect fit of where it should be placed. And that's the overall parts and components of the Anvil. Now, a couple care comments. This thing, the parts that really get dirty is going to be the part of the mouthpiece here, which is easy enough to clean. Just a little Q-tip. The stem is pretty easy to clean because, again, a Q-tip just fits in there. But this part, the outer part of the stem in here doesn't really get dirty at all. Sometimes this gets a little reclaim leakage on the top, but nothing major there. The bowl, I mean, I've run a bunch through this, and I've just taken a Q-tip and kind of swabbed that out. The screen that's inside the bowl there doesn't ever really get dirty because of the way that this thing works. I'll just assemble it so you can see. The air goes in these holes, up this way, in through the slots up top, and down over your flower this way. So the screen in there kind of does get gunked up. The one that's on top of the condenser here, this is the part that gets dirty right here. This gets all sorts of reclaim buildup in here. This screen gets pretty dirty. That was actually one of my more frustrating parts with the Anvil, is that this was kind of really difficult to clean. If you wanted to soak it, you had to get these O-rings out, which is never easy. The condenser, this part is too small for a Q-tip. A lot of my dab tools won't really fit in there. Like my master key doesn't really fit in there. So that was a little frustrating. So to get the screen out, the way you have to do it is I luckily have a tool that's really long and skinny like this, and I just put it in there, pop the screen out. And then if you look in here, the other thing is that this is all stepped. There's like 3 or 4 steps in here, and that just is a junk collector. So much stuff gets caught up in there, and even with a Q-tip, you know, you're like pushing it in there and trying to clean it. It's a lot of work to get this part clean, which is, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of refinement to be done in the Anvil stem. The oven, the engine is great. It really is just a smack in the face of vapor, so it's very effective. The stem, however, leaves a lot to be desired. So the screen, to get that back in, you just set it on top and use a flat tool to just push it in there like so. Now we're going to just reassemble it, put this back together like so, get the mouthpiece back on there, and push that all together. So now that I've shown you the stock setup, or stock-ish, with the updated stem, we've gone over all of the parts. Let's talk about how to use it. You put your flower in there, screw those together, and you're going to take a torch like the Blazer Firefox, and it's very similar to a Vape cap, where the higher on the tip that you heat, the cooler of vapor you're going to get and less extracted it will be. So if you heat all the way down here and point the flame right here, this is going to be your hottest, heaviest, darkest, blackest extraction down here right on the thermal battery. And in the Vestratto community, they call that riding the line. When you torch the thermal battery to the point of the second click and then wait just a moment and hit it, basically getting as close to combusting without combusting as possible. It can be used with an induction heater. It fits inside the Dynavap FFP without the glass cup, as well as the wand. VHB is making the VHB 3D for the Anvil, so it does work. Is it as effective as with a torch? Debatable, but it works. It for sure works. I would say that this is a torch device more so than an IH device. You can hit this thing natively. You can. Is it a pleasant experience? No, not at all. Natively, this thing is like a freight train of vapor. To be honest, the first couple days I had this, I rode the line a little too close and destroyed my lungs and had to take a couple days break from vaping. I've never really had a vape device do that. So this thing is really aggressive natively. Luckily, it does fit in a 10 millimeter water pipe right here and a 14 millimeter water pipe up to here. So really, in the stock configuration like this should be used in a water piece of some sort, or even just a glass piece for cooling, like a globe or a J-hook. If you are a brave soul who is just loves those big, heavy bong rips from combustion, maybe try it natively. However, if you don't like that big, heavy experience, I would really put this through some sort of cooling. A couple heating tips. This has a weird delay in it that when you're heating it, because the heat transfer to the top is actually quite slow, that when you hear the first click, you can actually stop heating, wait a second, and then you'll hear the second click. And then you wait another second, and it's kind of like a supercharged boost to where there's like this prime time of where this gets really effective once the heat soak has kind of transferred all the way to the top. So as I mentioned, this is a little aggressive natively. Luckily, Vestratto heard the community and released something called the USA, the Universal Stem Adapter, which is this bit here on the bottom. I'm going to take this apart. This is just your standard bowl, your standard Anvil oven. There's nothing special about these parts. This is actually interchangeable between devices. What's new in the USA is the shorter condenser to allow for stems that have condensers like Vape caps. And this adapter here, which goes from the Anvil oven to a 10 millimeter fitting with air hole adjustments. So we'll just put this together, same way. Just drop the condenser in, screw the bowl in the oven, and throw it on the USA. This is my Vape cap, most used MVS from Simrell with a 7-fin LE tip. So I'm going to just take that off and put the Anvil on here. Now, this is a native device. This is something for me with my baby lungs that I can hit natively and take huge rips off of. The USA really changed the game for the Anvil for me. When I first got the standard setup, I was on the fence. I thought I was going to get rid of it. And then I got the integrated stem to see if that would fix it. And I was still like, whoa, this thing is just like way too aggressive, way too much. In comes the USA, game changer. Absolute game changer. Because now, not only did that open up a bunch of stuff I own, like water pipe adapters, different stems, all sorts of things, that I get to use my collection with a new engine, which is a big, big plus for me. You know, because with the Anvil stem, it's like you got to pull this apart. Now there's all these other parts to move it around and do all this stuff with. With the USA, the engine is like compact. It's all together. I like that because I can take it off my native stem and then put it on my water pipe adapter, and it hits a lot better. It hits a lot better than this as well. So as you can see, it's very similar in construction, but the way that the airflow works on this, it's a lot less restrictive. There's a lot more airflow in the USA than there is in this. All right, and before I move on to demoing this for you, I'm just going to go over a couple of the other little accessories Vestratto has. They do have a cooling unit for their stem, which just drops in here like so. I mean, yeah, it made it a little cooler, but the problem is it took the already restrictive stem and made it more restrictive. So for me, not really a great aspect of that. So usually I keep it out, and if I do use the stock stem, I just use it as a water pipe adapter. Then we also have the case that it used to come with. Now this is an extra cost when you buy an Anvil. It's okay. I mean, this part kind of got me. It's really loud. I'm not like a huge fan of that, but that is what it is. The one thing I did like about the case, or I guess the two things I did like about the case, is that when you drop the device in, there's a magnet up here. So if you have it out and about and then you unscrew the lid, it actually pulls the device out. I thought that was pretty clever. You know, instead of having to pull the lid out and then dump the device in your hand, it's just a nice presentation to pull the device out like that. The other thing about the tube is it has this secondary spot up here to hold another bowl. They do offer 3 sizes of bowls. This is the half bowl. The full bowl is what I have, and they have an XL bowl. So it's basically Dynavap size, double Dynavap size, triple Dynavap size. And the other cool thing about the little bowl storage area is that if you do want to swap bowls, it's really easy just to screw it in there and to pull the bowl out. Or if you're out and about and you have the tube with you, to use that as like a little debowler type thing to pull that off. And that's the Vestratto tube. Okay, so I'm gonna put this native stem away. You know, as I kind of alluded to, the USA stem adapter thing really changed it for me. Since I got the USA, I haven't really used the native stem at all. So we're just gonna put that to the side. Grab my favorite flower, load that up. Grab my little demo device here. We're going to go with the Simrell globe cage today so you can see the vapor happening in there. I use this without water, and this is just enough to cool the Anvil for me. Usually I do like running it through something a little more intense, a water piece like this here. But for today, we're just going to stick with the globe. For me, heating, I like to try and just aim the flame right into this gap. You'll see a little spot shift color right there to know when you're heating it well enough. And I just use my Blazer Firefox great torch for the Anvil. And there's the first click, then you wait a second, and there's the second click. So as you can see, that was a couple really solid pulls. Almost on the verge of coughing up a lung, couple coughs. Very intense vapor. There's just so much of it that sometimes it's hard to handle. It's very dense. Yeah, dense and intense. The Anvil. Kind of makes sense. All right. Now, for the part that I know a lot of you like to see, what's the ABV like? How dark is it? How much did I get out of that? So I probably could have pushed that a little further. It's not really that dark coffee brown. It's a light golden brown. This is good. This is actually where I typically like to be anyways. The Anvil definitely can go way, 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 way darker. But that being said, combusting in this thing is terrible. Do whatever you can do to never combust in this thing, because it's on a whole nother level of pain. Yeah, the Anvil, it's some serious stuff. This is not for beginners, that's for sure. It's definitely a one and done device. I would not try and run this ABV again. It's I mean, you can run it on 2 cycles, but that's not really where it shines. Where it shines is those really big one and done heavy hits. If you do end up getting an Anvil, I suggest getting a Pedestal. It's a great little tool to unscrew the bowl and de-bowl it. And just, it also helps cool. Because the Anvil is so dense and heavy, it does take a second to cool. So having a little cooling stand or rest like this, or the Pedestal, is a perfect cooling device just to speed up the cooling so you can do back-to-back bowls. Now to wrap it up, let's talk about price. In its stock configuration with the integrated condenser like this is $300. You are looking at a $300 device here. Now, with something like a Simrell Shortex and an FMJ on a 5-fin titanium tip, something like this on a stem, you can get, you know, for $100. Is this $200 better? Stay tuned for my next video to find out. Is this $200 better? I don't know. Debatable. If you are looking for that volume and a Dynavap just isn't cutting it for you on the volume of flour, maybe consider an Anvil. If the Dynavap does it for you and it's just you want bigger, heavier extractions, an FMJ will be fine. This device is not for beginners. It's not for somebody that doesn't have lung capacity. It's not for somebody that wants a pleasant experience. These are for the people that want the big, knockout, huge, combustion level vapor bong rips. The Anvil by Vestratto. Keeping it serious. Stay lifted.